I'm delighted to introduce Amy Rudersdorf from AVP, who's going to be presenting on preserving digital assets, a gap in the DAM marketplace.
Thank you, Heather. I'm excited to be here. I appreciate the introduction and appreciate the opportunity to talk to everyone today. I wanted to quickly start out by just telling you who AVP is. So we are a digital asset management consultancy focusing on making digital assets easier to find, share, protect, and put to good use. And you may know us from our DAM operational model, the image on the right there. So that's just a very quick introduction, and we'll jump right into the presentation now. This is what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about the problem of DAM and digital preservation, defining what good enough digital preservation means. We'll talk about why DAMs don't just do digital preservation, but how we can use them for preservation today. And then going back to the good enough idea, deciding what is good enough for your organization and how to choose a DAM system that addresses your needs. So let's start with the problem of DAM and digital preservation. So cultural heritage organizations, or GLAMP, as we're referring to them today, increasingly seek out a digital asset management system that integrates robust digital preservation capabilities for preserving their digital assets. They often recognize the importance of investing in digital preservation, but struggle with the challenge of maintaining separate DAM and digital preservation systems for many reasons, but often due to limited resources. So while DAM systems typically prioritize security, permissions, and utilize cloud storage, all the same sort of thing that digital preservation systems do, they still lack the comprehensive functionality that many cultural heritage organizations and others like them are seeking to help preserve their digital assets. So despite the maturity of the DAM market, there remains a gap between some of the preservation functionality that cultural heritage organizations desire and the DAMs currently available. So at AVP, one of the things that we help organizations do is to procure systems, whether they're DAM systems, MAM systems, digital preservation. But what we've witnessed recently, and I'd say in the last couple of years, is a shift in what organizations are seeking through our work, assisting them in finding the perfect technology solutions to meet especially their unique DAM requirements. So before we jump into what a system can and cannot do, I want to talk about the concept of good enough digital preservation. So essentially, good enough recognizes that not everyone can achieve or maintain the highest levels of digital preservation, such as those defined by, in the lower right-hand corner, level 4 of the National Digital Stewardship Alliance's levels of digital preservation, or full conformance with the ISO standard 16363, which is the audit and certification of trustworthy digital repositories. Because this means that you are preserving all your digital assets for all eternity, and your system is able to manage that. And I think it's fair to say that there are very few systems on the market that can do these things. So we have to decide what's good enough for our organization. The problem is that many of these guidelines can feel overwhelming and unattainable, as I mentioned. So when organizations search for a DAM solution, they often have an expectation that it will solve all their digital preservation planning challenges and result in a perfect A+ in digital preservation. But as I've said, and what we've come to realize through our work, is that this expectation is just not in line with reality. So why can't DAMs just do digital preservation? So I'd like to delve into the reasons behind this disparity and share AVP's recommendations on how organizations can navigate the technical landscape for preserving digital assets effectively. Let's explore the evolving needs of organizations and uncover strategies for achieving their goals within the realm of digital asset management and digital preservation. So it's crucial to grasp the fundamental differences between these two types of systems and their respective functionality. So to start off, according to IBM, a DAM is a comprehensive solution that streamlines the storage, organization, management, retrieval, and distribution, and I would highlight those last two characteristics of an organization's digital assets. Whereas a digital preservation system focuses on policies, strategies, and actions to ensure long-term access to reformatted and born digital content, regardless of the challenges of media failure or technological change. The goal with digital preservation is the accurate rendering of authenticated content over time. It tends to be more like a locked safe rather than a distribution system. So just to bring this into a clearer light, let's paint a visual picture where we envision the DAM as a lending library. So just like books neatly arranged on shelves, our ideal digital asset management system is meticulously organized, described, and managed. Library users can navigate the catalog using various criteria such as keywords, author, or date to locate specific books or assets, just as they can in the DAM. And similar to needing a library card to borrow books, access to the DAM requires registered users to have appropriate permissions to access and utilize the digital assets. So essentially, a well-managed DAM ensures your assets are secure, easily searchable, and readily accessible. And like I said, the DAM functions as a virtual library, providing efficient organization and control over your digital resources. All right, let's take this analogy a little further and now talk about the unique characteristics of a digital preservation system and how they relate to the library. Imagine the library books that are not frequently accessed. Instead of occupying valuable space on the main shelves, they're often relocated to a secure, climate-controlled warehouse. These books are packed in containers on tall shelving units and are accessible by only a few people. Browsing becomes nearly impossible, as you can see. Searching becomes challenging, and obtaining one of these books typically requires assistance from a librarian. In the digital realm, a digital preservation system serves as the counterpart to this offsite storage. It replaces physical locked offsite storage with secure user permissions. It ensures file verification and fixity testing to maintain data integrity. It employs packaging mechanisms called bags, sometimes, not always, and utilizes cold data storage for long-term preservation. So, while a digital preservation system focuses primarily on safeguarding and preserving digital assets, it also prioritizes security and protection over immediate accessibility. So we're hearing some characteristics that overlap. These are different systems, but they have some similar functionality. So it's evident that the fundamental purposes of DAM and digital preservation systems are significantly different, although there are areas of overlap. So for an example, if you go to the library or the warehouse, you're going to have to check the book out in some way. And if you've ever walked out of a library without checking out your book, you're going to set an alarm off. Likewise, both DAM and digital preservation systems maintain strong user permissions to ensure security. Similarly, at the same time, while libraries may employ climate control measures, albeit less stringent perhaps than those governing the warehouse's temperature and humidity levels, some DAMs may also implement lightweight functionality for preserving digital assets, such as creating checksums upon upload. So just to recap, DAMs primarily excel in efficient asset management and user accessibility, allowing organizations to easily organize, retrieve, and distribute again, retrieve and distribute their digital assets. Digital preservation systems place paramount importance on long-term preservation and data integrity, safeguarding valuable assets for future generations. So this distinction really emphasizes the intrinsically divergent purposes of DAM and digital preservation systems. So having said all that, can you or how do you use dams for preservation today? So I put together this chart, this bronze, silver, and gold sort of metal chart to give you an idea of what some dam systems are already doing in the realm of digital preservation. And some of it is just basic functionality that these systems do as part of their dam infrastructure, but some of them they've branched out to really think about digital preservation. So at a minimum, most dam systems create a checksum hash like an MD5 on ingest or upload. They log events like audit trails require whenever actions are taken on files. So when something's uploaded or downloaded or metadata is changed, any action or event is typically logged in most systems. And then there's typically an exit strategy that includes getting your metadata and assets out. At the silver level, you might see viruses being checked on ingest, the offer of hybrid or tiered storage, which is a combination of hot and cold storage being like Amazon Glacier, or online, nearline, and offline storage like LTO tape. There may be an archive option that could be used to indicate the move to deep storage, and the exit strategy typically would include more structured metadata, and it would ensure that your assets are exported with the original file names. And then finally, there's this gold standard, and this is only a very few small number of dam systems that make checksum values visible to users, allow the testing of checksum values on ingest, enabling manual or regular fixity testing, running reports on those event logs. So not only logging events, but actually having reports that you can review and in fact share to show an unaltered audit trail. And then finally, in these rare instances, those event logs are also exportable on exit from the system. So you can see there is some activity happening in this area. It just is happening slowly, and only a few dams have really picked up on these requirements. And I will say, at this time, to my knowledge, there isn't a dam that performs automated obsolescence monitoring. So you may be able to migrate your obsolete file formats, but the system isn't doing the monitoring to let you know when a file becomes obsolete. And then also it is rare, if not completely off the radar, that logged events are structured using the premise metadata schema. And the premise metadata schema is the language used to describe preservation actions. So going back to this idea of good enough, essentially good enough digital preservation recognizes that not everyone can achieve or maintain the highest levels of digital preservation. And so thinking about that bronze, silver, and gold, you have to decide what's good enough for you. Oops. So how do we do that? First and foremost, organizations should focus on developing a clear understanding of the distinctions between a dam and a digital preservation system. This knowledge forms the foundation for informed decision-making and empowers organizations to choose the right path, system, or infrastructure. Next, organizations need to assess their risk comfort levels. And I would say this is probably the most important thing that an organization has to do. What functionalities are essential for your peace of mind? Are there specific data management or digital preservation regulations they must comply with? Something like HIPAA regulations. Can a dam system meet these requirements effectively? If not, you need to determine the functionalities that take precedence and decide whether a dam or a digital preservation system is more suitable for your needs. Dam vendors also play a crucial role in this process. It's essential for them to familiarize themselves with basic digital preservation software functionality. This understanding enables them to respond effectively to client requirements and deliver solutions that align with those specific needs. Dam vendors should also actively consider aligning with some of the guidelines I've pointed out earlier, especially the NDSA levels of digital preservation, which are a little more attainable than the ISO standard. By doing so, vendors not only benefit clients with a need for digital preservation, but also contribute to the long-term accessibility of assets within the dam for all users. And this alignment has the potential to promote industry-wide best practices and ensures the preservation and availability of digital assets beyond individual client needs. So there's two big questions that you need to answer when you're thinking about whether your dam can fulfill your digital preservation needs. First of all, you need to recognize that not all dam systems need to encompass complete digital preservation functionality. So again, thinking about those bronze, silver, and gold levels, not all the dams need to do all the things, but you need to decide if the dam you select needs to do certain functions that are at those different levels. Are you most comfortable at the silver level? Great, then choose a dam that does those things. And the reality is that some organizations heavily invested in digital preservation may have a particularly low risk tolerance for loss and damage, and despite DAM's other capabilities, may choose not to depend on it alone to achieve their preservation objectives. And that's just the reality. There are going to be people or organizations that want to look at more heavy hitters and look at digital preservation systems to perhaps work in conjunction or integrate with their dam system. All right, so how do you choose a system that does what you need? So in light of all these considerations, it's crucial for organizations to engage in internal discussions to determine their specific needs and priorities. You want to bring in IT, you want to bring in your legal folks, and these conversations need to address risk levels and the functionalities that are essential for your peace of mind and compliance with your data management requirements. By having these dialogues, organizations can collectively define an acceptable level of preservation within the realm of DAM. Although reaching consensus may present challenges, the goal is to find a comfortable middle ground that satisfies the needs of everyone in the organization. This process not only addresses their requirements effectively, but also has the potential to drive innovation within the DAM industry as a whole. So I just want to point out there are a few ways to reach out. I've got my email address there. Don't forget to stop by our booth by clicking on the exhibit button at the top of the screen, or visit our website at weareavp.com. And really quickly, I want to make sure I give credit to the photographers who took the lovely pictures I used in the presentation.
Great, thank you, Amy. So please, if you haven't had a chance, put your questions in that Q&A tab. Somebody had asked for a link to the NDSA standard, so we put that in the chat. Let's see, we have one question. In your experience, given the cost of storage, how much of a total dam budget should be allocated to preservation?
Ooh, that's a tough question to answer. I think, we have what we call the dam operational model, which looks at all parts of the dam management process and the digital asset management process. And I think you have to consider all of those facets when you're thinking about how much you need, the resources you need to support your digital asset management program. There may be a need for more storage because you're saving master files, which are usually the high quality TIFFs, or there are AV files as well that will require more space. if you find a system that can send your masters off to cold storage and keep your smaller files, the replicated files, the JPEGs or more accessible formats, and keep those in the DAM, then your costs may come down a little bit, actually, because you're not storing those large files in what we call hot storage or online access. The big stuff's being stored in cheaper storage, like, for example, Amazon Glacier. So I'm sort of not answering this question, but I hope that that helps you think about your needs.
Yeah, thanks. I think that we all kind of hope that there's like some magic formula that we can all follow and we'll be, following the rules and doing everything right. But I think a lot of the times it's kind of up to an individual organization's kind of what are your priorities and what's most important. And I know personally, like kind of, what can we do? This like idea of what is good enough, like just knowing where the assets are and making them findable is like a really fundamental level that you have to do before you can rush forward kind of to trying to be perfect in digital preservation. So I wonder if you, have any insight into how do you know if your organization is ready to sort of move up into kind of a next level of, digital preservation maturity?
That's a good question too. So I think there are a couple of ways to approach that. The first one is you're going to hear something from some of the decision makers in your organization who say, we've invested in these assets. We need to make sure they're available for a long time. We are interested in our legacy as an organization. So, hold on to these assets. I think your legal department or rights and reproductions department may have some feelings about how files are being managed over the long term. That idea of an audit trail is really important in a legal sense. It's also important if you wanted to just show someone, prove to someone that that file is unchanged over time. So you're hearing it from those perspectives. But then there are also the people who are working with the files, who know the files best. And you'll know in your gut when it's time to really start thinking about digital preservation. And if you already have a DAM, you may want to start exploring the functionality that's already available. If you don't, or you're in the process of looking for a DAM, it's a great time to start thinking about digital preservation and the functionality you may need even down the road. Try to get the system that fits your needs as early in the process as possible.
Great.
I saw a question I wanted to answer. Can I do that? So it's a tough question to answer. Again, these are all great questions with no specific answer necessarily. So Tracy asked, for an organization exploring dams for the first time, what is a realistic NDSA level to aim for in the initial stages? Not level 4. So let's just take level 4 off the table. I think here again, it's about your readiness. So the system is going to do certain functionality, but there's work that has to happen before the data goes into the system. You need to have some planning. It's great to have a policy in place. So once you've got that sort of organizational structure in place, you'll be in good shape to start thinking about what level of digital preservation you're ready to take on. And I think you should start reasonably. So it might be great to ask for all the level 3 things when you're doing your requirements for a dam, with the understanding that, as we saw on my chart earlier, there aren't that many systems that can do all of those things. So part of it is going to be budgetary. Part of it is going to be balancing your dam needs with your digital preservation needs. So that's my answer
Yeah,
there.
that's great. I think that there are a number of questions that are sort of uh, how do you know if you need both? Maybe you have a preservation system but no dams, and you're trying to use, one as both. Is it better to have both? If you do have both, how do you strategize that? Are they integrated? Are they
Right.
separate? Is there any recommendations that you have?
So we've worked with organizations that have both dam and digital preservation systems that are integrated. And we've helped organizations actually secure and do some of the integration of those systems. And that works great for them. They have materials they feel are not secure enough in the dam. So they have both systems. Obviously, that can be a resource limitation for organizations. Not just buying the systems, but maintaining them, maintaining the integration. None of that is static. So I would say you need to think about, again, going back to your level of comfort with risk. If you are not comfortable with any risk, then you probably need a dam and a digital preservation system at this point. I mean, there are definitely, like I said, there are gold standard dams that are doing a lot of this work. But if you have no comfort with risk, then I think you need to look at both systems. If you're comfortable with the gold standard, then maybe a dam is all you need. It's going to come down to figuring out what your requirements are, and again, what your comfort level with risk is. And the reality is, maybe nothing will happen to your assets in the dam. Maybe they'll be fine. We don't really know, but we do know what good digital preservation looks like. And so it's really, again, have a conversation with the people inside your organization. Talk to people like us who do this have these conversations all the time. Really do try to educate yourself about what the systems can do and what you really need.
Yeah, that's great. And I think, maybe a lot of people working in this space, don't necessarily they maybe know their requirements, but turning that into sort of a technical requirement for a vendor is maybe, a complicated process, or you're not sure how to tell, from the marketing website, whether it really does this or not. So how do you recommend kind of approaching that?
So I think it's important to do two things if you're going out to bid, like if you're doing an RFP. You need to, first of all, have a list of requirements. And if they aren't the most perfect list in the world, at least, just get something on paper that you can have this conversation around with the vendors. And then also turn those into use cases so that you provide context to the vendor about what those requirements really mean. So if you're asking for a digital preservation function, then you want to provide context about why you're asking for that digital preservation function. What is the user need? And that's what use cases are, is they tell a story about a user's journey through a technology. And I think having those two pieces is a great start to informing the vendors about what your needs look like, and then having the conversation from there. Because you're right, you usually can't tell on the website.
That's great. Okay, well, there's so many great questions. We didn't get a chance to go to all of them, but if you didn't get your question answered, please go to the AVP booth, and I know that they'll be happy to answer. And I think there are also probably resources they could share about some of these specific questions about standards and best practices. And so, yes, we'll leave this session and go to the next session, where we will, in track 2, hear from Levi Strauss and Company about the role of history and their corporate archives. And thanks so much, Amy.
Thank
And thanks
you.
everybody for coming.